broadcast every night is incredibly important.
President Biden addresses the nation on the issues facing America. Join Nora O'Donnell and the CBS News political team beginning at 5 for in-depth coverage and analysis. Complete live coverage of the State of the Union. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app.
I'm looking forward hearing President Biden later today about the amazing progress we've made.
We'll undoubtedly hear dizzying spin from Joe Biden as he attempts to tell the American people they're better off now.
Joe Biden is a blue-collar guy, and he gets, the struggle.
We need a different approach. No drawing lines in the sand or saying it's my way or the highway.
President Biden tried to call it a success that they shot the balloon down over the ocean. The problem is it was the wrong ocean that shot it down.
Welcome to a special edition of Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns on Capitol Hill.
And I'm Ed O'Keefe. Thank you for joining us from here at the Cannon House office building. President Biden set to deliver the second State of the Union address of his presidency at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight.
New CBS News polling out today, however, paints a tough environment for the president this evening. 62% of Americans polled believe the state of the country is divided, and 49% say it's declining. Only 13% believe the U.S. is strong.
As for what most Americans who are likely to watch think is important to hear about, 2/3 of them want the president to speak on the economy and inflation. That comes in ahead of immigration, crime, and education.
And joining us tonight are our CBS News colleagues. We have senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang at the White House. Congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is on Capitol Hill. Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett is also on Capitol Hill. And Chief Election and Campaign correspondent Robert Costa is in Washington.
Let's start over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, where they're putting the final touches on the speech. T-minus 4 hours to go. Weijia Jiang, what do we know about the president's preparations and what he might tell us tonight?
Well, Ed, we know that we haven't seen the president all day today, and he didn't have any public events on his schedule, likely because he is putting those finishing touches on this address. He is known to, change wording, to add things in to the very last minute. And this comes after an entire weekend of prep with his most senior advisors, people who have been by his side for decades, along with historian and author John Meacham, to add a little bit more of context about this speech and where the country is right now. As far as what we expect to hear from the president, you already nailed it. He is going to take the economy head on, and he's going to try to sell his agenda and really convince Americans that what he has done so far is working. He'll talk about his bipartisan infrastructure law. He'll talk about falling inflation, a record amount of job growth. But the problem, as Caitlin pointed out, is that that's not resonating with most Americans. It's not just our poll, but several polls show that people do not feel satisfied with the state of the economy. And so he's going to have to try to break through that. And I know there is frustration here at the White House that the president will address, that it takes time to implement a lot of these policies that he's put in place. But time isn't necessarily on his side, guys, whenever he's delivering this message and people are not feeling what he is saying. So TBD whether this will land, but certainly he will try to reassure Americans with an optimistic message. We are told that, things are in a good state.
Weijia Jiang at the White House. Thank you. Scott MacFarlane is here on Capitol Hill across the way at the Senate side. Scott, how are Democrats and Republicans preparing for tonight? And what more should we know about the atmospherics around the president's speech tonight?
Well, Ed and Caitlin, pretty clear the messaging they're going to try to push tonight based on the guests they've brought and the internal messaging memos they've shared and that CBS News has obtained. Republicans were urging their rank-and-file members to bring guests with ties to the border agents, law enforcement, crime, or women's sports rights or woke Board of Education policies, which have been political points of focus for Republicans over the past few years. Democrats were urged to bring people with some skin in the game on the issue of abortion rights, gun reform, police reform. And we're going to see that in the crowd tonight, in the gallery, which means we'll also likely hear that either during the president's address or during the Republican responses. I'm told Republican members have been urged by their leadership to be active on social media during the address, before it and after it, and to pre-record messages for the media back home criticizing the president and his policies so far. What a balancing act for the president, as he has a new Speaker of the House sitting over his right shoulder. I guess it's his left shoulder. A Republican House majority, narrow as it is, that controls his legislative plans and hopes and dreams. And if there's going to be a bipartisan moment tonight, most State of the Union addresses have at least one. Congressional staffers expect it will be under the issue of fentanyl. Both parties have brought guests with some ties to the issue of fentanyl overdoses and that scourge in our society. It's likely if the president mentions it, both parties will stand and applaud.
And Scott, I know you have dwelled on this week. We are once again seeing the 8-foot-high fencing around the Capitol. You can't see it here in the shot. Maybe you can just in the bottom corners a little bit. Those security precautions brought back, obviously, harkening back to 2 years ago after the insurrection.
Yeah, an 8-foot hulking black metal fence surrounds the entirety of this complex. When I say entirety, I mean 175,000 square feet of U.S. Capitol grounds are surrounded by this fencing. It went up over the weekend. It'll remain through at least tomorrow. It's temporary. It is unequivocally unpopular with much of the Capitol Hill community, who says it equates the Capitol campus, the citadel of democracy, with an encampment. Capitol Police told CBS News this is out of an abundance of caution. This is a national security special event, and it's temporary. But Ed and Caitlin, this does seem to be an increasingly frequent component of our post-January 6th world here at the Capitol.
All right, Scott McFarland on the other side of the Capitol, thank you. We'll look forward to your coverage tonight as well. Good to see you. To dive deeper into tonight's address and the Republicans' response, let's turn to Major Garrett and Robert Costa. Bob, I want to start with you. You've covered a lot of these. I'm wondering what you are hearing from people that you've been talking to about what to expect tonight. Scott made a good point that this is the first time that Biden's going to be facing a divided Congress, and we'll see that image with Kevin McCarthy just over his shoulder.
Good to be with you all. For President Biden, this is an important legislative moment with the debt ceiling looming, but it is also an important political crossroads. He has still yet to announce his 2024 re-election campaign, though many of his advisors continue to say that it is very likely to happen. And tonight is, in a sense, a preview of what's to come in the next few months as he moves closer to announcing that 2024 campaign. But this will be a revealing time for political reporters, for longtime observers of President Biden, to see, is this moment for the Biden presidency going to be different as he casts himself potentially for re-election? You think back to the Clinton years, and in 1994, the Republicans won control of the House, and that was a major, major win for them. And you saw the Clinton presidency recalibrate in 1995, 1996. Such a narrow majority for Republicans in the House this time around. Democrats feel good about still holding the Senate. So many Democrats tell me privately they're not looking for a full recalibration by the Biden presidency and its supporters at this time, but they are waiting to see how much of a turn toward the center is he really going to make.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about unity and the unity agenda, which he'll talk about mental health, fentanyl overdoses, tackling that issue, veterans care. But it's a long speech, and Major Garrett, as you know, they try to dump a laundry list of things into this address and hope that they can hold an audience. You've been through a few of these as well. Yes. Your thoughts as the president prepares here in the final hours?
Yeah, the first State of the Union I covered was 1990, so I've been through a few. Look, for President Biden, this is a things look better than they were supposed to look moment. Yes, Republicans have a narrow majority in the House, but they don't have control of the Senate, and many Republicans and some of those who were nervous within the Democratic Party before the midterm elections were fearful the Republicans would take control of both chambers. More sizable majorities in the House and 1 or 2 seats in the Senate. That didn't transpire. So politically, President Biden is much stronger than he thought he would be, and many Democrats thought he would be coming out of those midterms. That gives the administration a bit of breathing room. And really, it knows it cannot be aggressive and realistic. It being aggressive but not realistic about big legislative achievements. What it can do in this third year of the Biden presidency is to make sure those things that have already happened, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act with all the subsidies for green energy, actually become visible, practical realities on the ground for Americans across the country. That is what year 3 is all about, because if that work is done, the White House believes, and there's a certain amount of history on this, the economic evaluation of the Biden presidency will improve, because the economic numbers are pretty good. They're just not widely felt. And the way you make those things widely felt is to make them more visible, more practical, more real. That's why the third year of the Biden presidency really has to be, if it's going to be a success, about implementing what's already been done.
And quickly, Major, I understand you have some sense of what the Republican response will look and sound like when Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders speaks after the president?
Yes, indeed. Sarah Huckabee Sanders will, among other things, contrast herself, the youngest governor in America, 40, with the oldest president in American history, President Biden, and talk about a new generation of leadership. And will that include a new generation of leadership on the Republican side? Well, maybe by inference, but not directly. Of course, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is closely aligned with former President Trump, though she doesn't describe herself as fully MAGA, but she's certainly close enough to it. Why was she chosen by the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and the minority leader on the Senate side, Mitch McConnell? Well, because they were looking for someone who was not a surefire or potential 2024 challenger to former President Trump. Sarah Huckabee Sanders isn't in that camp, so she's a safe choice, but also someone who is close enough to the MAGA movement to make it clear that both McCarthy and McConnell are nominally supportive of that. So it's kind of a thread-the-needle move on her part. One of the other things that Governor Huckabee will say is the Democrats and the woke culture that they talk about is crazy, and Republicans are more sane and normal, at least in that part of the conversation. That's another needle, culturally, she'll have to thread.
And interestingly enough, she will be the second Arkansas governor to give this response. Back in 1985, one Bill Clinton was tasked with that.
But the first to grow up in that mansion, since she is, of course, the daughter of the former Governor Mike Huckabee. Major and Bob, we got to leave it there, but we thank you both, and we'll be chatting along the way. As we've said, President Biden is going to call for unity tonight.
And coming up, White House Principal Deputy Communications Director Kate Berner joins us to lay out how exactly he'll do that. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
The era of big government is over, but we cannot go back to the time when our citizens were left to fend for themselves. Instead, we must go forward as one America, one nation, working together to meet the challenges we face together.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift. I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Racism.
I feel like it's just a war zone between all different races.
Will this generation continue the problem?
The kids pushed them away and didn't want them to be there because of their race.
Or be the solution?
We just need to keep raising our voices. We're all human and we don't deserve that type of treatment just because of how we look.
Are the kids all right? Racism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme, CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real, you'll have time to get prepared. Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt. Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression.
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
And welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns here on Capitol Hill.
And I'm Ed O'Keefe. President Biden is expected to tout accomplishments related to the economy and foreign affairs, despite facing criticism from some GOP lawmakers ahead of the State of the Union.
No amount of spin this evening will change the reality so many Americans are facing. They are worse off now than they were 2 years ago. That is a fact. Luckily, Americans elected a Republican House majority to stop this madness. House Republicans are laser focused on delivering results.
So for more on how President Biden is preparing, Administration White House Deputy Communications Director Kate Berner joins us now with more. Kate, good to see you. Thanks for being here. I want to start with some of these poll numbers that CBS has out today that don't really paint a good picture for the president. You have 62% of the country saying the country is divided, 62% of Americans, I should say, and a majority of them saying that the Biden administration policies are making things like the economy and inflation worse. I know that a lot of Americans want to hear about the economy tonight. How does the president address that challenge?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Caitlin. Thanks. Good to see you, Ed, on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. So the president's going to speak directly, plainly to the American people tonight. He's going to talk about the progress we've made. I just saw your intro with Congressman Emmer, and I really couldn't disagree more with what he laid out. 2 years ago, millions of Americans were getting COVID and in the hospital every day. Schools were closed. Millions were out of work. Main streets were shuttered. And we've seen extraordinary progress in the last 2 years because of the strength and the resilience of the American people, because of the plans that President Biden has put into office. We learned last Friday more than 12 million people are back to work. Those are 12 million families with a paycheck, with the dignity that that provides, able to support for their kids, put them back in school, maybe get a new pair of cleats for sports. So this is huge progress on the economy that we're seeing for families across the country. Because of laws the president signed, seniors are now, their insulin is capped at $35 a month. Their out-of-pocket prescription drug prices are capped at $2,000 a year. Gas prices are down $1.50. The president is going to say we have more work to do. We have to finish the job, but we're making progress growing the economy from the bottom up, middle out, creating good paying jobs and lowering prices to give families more breathing room.
Look, Kate, I don't think anybody disputes the numbers. 517,000 more jobs created in January. You blew away the economist expectations of how many jobs would be created. 3.4% unemployment puts it the lowest since the late 1960s, which is what I think boggles the minds of those of us who then see these results that suggest Americans think he isn't doing anything to fix the economy. Is it that they're not paying attention? Is it that they're not seeing these results yet? They're not seeing bridges and roads being built? Or is something about the way the message is being delivered just not breaking through?
Well, look, I don't think we should over-index on any one poll in this moment. We just saw a historic midterm result where the president's accomplishments were voted back into office, right? We saw more senators come back than any president, I think, since FDR. We staved off, what CBS and others had predicted as a red wave in the House and other locations. And that's because the American people believed that what the president and congressional Democrats had accomplished with the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and more were the right plan, and they wanted to see it keep going. You're right in that more of this is going to come into force this year. We're going to see more roads and bridges projects break ground. We're going to see the prescription drug provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act come into effect, and people will see the impacts of these laws in their paychecks, in their bank accounts, and that should make an impact on how people are feeling about the economy.
Yes, sorry, Kate, we had a little blip there. Although I would say one thing, because this has come up before with Democrats and Republicans. CBS was actually one of the few places that had one model that suggested there wouldn't be a red wave if younger voters showed up as they did. So we like to point that out when that line of attack is used. But otherwise, what were you going to say?
I stand corrected. But either way, Ed, I think we can say that there was a political punditry that there would be a red wave in November that we didn't see. And I think a lot of that, and Ed, we've talked about that, was because of the choice that was before folks, the choice to continue to provide families more breathing room, to grow the economy from the bottom up, middle out, or a different vision, a trickle-down economic vision that involved cutting Social Security and Medicare, raising taxes on working families. That was thoroughly rejected. And tonight in the State of the Union, the president is going to once again outline his vision, his economic vision to grow the economy from the bottom up, middle out, to reinvigorate parts of the country like Scranton, where he's from, that had fallen behind for so long.
The wave wasn't what Republicans had predicted, but they still won control of the House, and we'll see that tonight with Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. The president, as you mentioned, does want to talk about unity and places of bipartisanship. But, just yesterday you had Speaker McCarthy saying that he wants something to give on the debt ceiling. What evidence does the administration have that this is a Congress that is open to working with the administration? I mean, how can you get anything done in a bipartisan fashion? What evidence is there that that's possible?
Well, look, you're going to hear the president talk about this tonight. The president is proud of his bipartisan record from the previous Congress. That's the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, CHIPS and Science Act, the Electoral Reform Act. The list goes on and on. But the president believes that the American people sent him and sent members of Congress to Washington to get things done, to deliver. He'll extend, as you've heard him say, an open hand to members of Congress to work with him. But the American people have an expectation that Republicans in Congress are going to work with him. And we expect to see them meet that obligation.
Kate Berner is Principal Deputy Communications Director at the White House. Kate, you're a good friend of the show. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you back there at the White House at some point tomorrow.
Look forward to seeing you soon. Good to see you, Caitlin.
Take care. As the president prepares for his annual address tonight, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are calling for unity.
Washington Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal joins us with more on that next. You're streaming Red and Blue.
This is a regime that has something to hide from the civilized world. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. By seeking weapons of mass destruction, these regimes pose a grave and growing danger.
an original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe.
And I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns. President Biden will have plenty to discuss tonight during his State of the Union address, including the country's economic future and what the Democratic vision is going forward. Earlier today, we were joined by Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington State's 7th District. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the speech tonight. What do you want to hear from the president?
Well, I'm really excited to be with you. I'm very excited to hear the president brag. I think he's got a lot of accomplishments to talk about, things that under his leadership he put forward at the beginning of the 2 years, and things that we delivered. We have a strong economy given the circumstances of what we were coming out of. But 517,000 jobs created just in the last month, unemployment down to the lowest level in over half a century, 10 million new jobs created over the last 2 years. And we're making things in America again. We're bringing hope to places across the country that have seen jobs go and are now seeing them come back. We're giving hope to young people with the biggest investment in climate change. So I expect that he's going to talk about all those things. I also think he's going to paint a vision for the rest of the agenda. Universal child care, investments in housing. These are some of the biggest inflationary costs that people are dealing with. And I think they want to know, what is the plan? These are big parts of the president's agenda that we have yet to achieve, and so I'm looking forward to hearing him talk about that as well.
But on the economy, in our polling just out today, that's what Americans want to hear about. But a majority of them think that Biden's policies are contributing to a worsening economy and high inflation. We also had 62% of people in our poll saying that the country is divided. What is leading to that? If the economy is looking good on paper, as you say, it's clear that Americans are just not feeling it.
Yeah, I think it takes a while for some of these things to trickle all the way down, and I think the reality is people are coming out of a really tough several years. I mean, the COVID crisis was an emergency. It was the biggest economic crisis that we've seen since the Great Depression, and it was tough on people. I think what the president has done, what Democrats have delivered, is we've brought people up. we've given some breathing room, but does it mean that we're all done and everybody feels great? No. I also think that some of this legislation will take some time to roll out. So, we capped insulin at $35 for seniors. Not everybody has actually felt that yet. We've capped the cost of prescription drugs. Some of that doesn't roll out until later this year. So there are a number of things I think that people will continue to feel. It's our job to do both the work of letting people know what we've done, but also recognizing that we're not done. We have a lot more that we have to accomplish. And in that, I think we're going to hear the president talk about police accountability with Tyree Nichols' parents in the room, Michael Brown's parents in the room. I think we're going to hear him talk about the attacks on trans youth. I'm the mom of a trans kid, and I know how painful that has been to hear from the other side. And I think we're going to hear him talk about the need to codify abortion rights. So these are all big projects, but we are making progress. We can make progress, and there's a very clear contrast between Democrats and Republicans.
You're going to start trying to implement these new projects and see through the other ones with a new chief of staff in place. And you guys in your Progressive Caucus are losing one of your biggest allies and interlocutors over at the West Wing with Ron Klain, expected to leave this week. Remind us, why was he so essential for you and for the Progressive Caucus? What do you know about Jeff Zients? What concerns might there be about whether he's going to be just as good an ally?
Well, Ron's terrific. I just spoke to him last night. It was probably my last call, sad to say, in his official capacity. But Ron was so terrific for a couple of reasons. One, he completely understands what the president wants to achieve. Two, he understood that progressives are some of the president's biggest friends on achieving these things. And three, he really saw kind of the power of the Progressive Caucus in being able to hold the line for the president's agenda, being able to move progressives as a group when we didn't get everything we wanted, but we got a lot. And so I think he really respected the strength and the power, and he himself is a progressive. And I think he really believes, as the president does, in all of these policies. I don't know Jeff as well, but I didn't know Ron when we started, and I count him as a friend now. I hope that same relationship of respect for progressives and for the base, particularly leading up to an election year again, is going to be there from Jeff. But as Ron said to me, Jeff is there to implement the president's agenda. The president's agenda has not changed. It is still the most progressive agenda that I've seen from a president in recent history, and I believe that the president's going to continue to respect the strength and the power of progressives.
You are head of the Progressive Caucus, one of the largest bloc of House Democrats. But one of the things we're going to hear a lot from the president tonight is about unity. Elements of what he calls his unity agenda, issues that he believes Democrats and Republicans can and should be working together on. As a Democrat in Congress, is there something you are or you want to work with Republicans on specifically? And is there somebody you've met maybe in the new class of Republicans who you're like, I could work with that person?
I think there's a couple of things, and it all depends on what this Republican Party ends up being. But I would say antitrust is a place that the president has done enormous work. We have done enormous work. I was the vice chair of the antitrust subcommittee, and we had a bipartisan vote on a package of 6 bills. And a lot of agreement around that, and agreement in the Senate as well. So I think that's one area. A second, which will be harder, but I am very committed to working on, is the issue of immigration. I'm going to be the ranking member on the immigration subcommittee, and I believe that there are some Republicans who understand that the real answer here is to have a humane immigration system that continues to uphold the values of our country. And so while I know that's not the direction the leadership has gone, I am hoping that maybe we can find some places where we can clearly agree, and we have bipartisan support, like the Farm Workers Bill, the Dreamers Bill. These are things that the majority of Americans agree on. Let's get some of these things done. Let's give some hope to immigrants who hold up our country every single day and deserve to be acknowledged for that.
Anyone in particular, any Republican in particular that you feel like you could work with on that?
Well, Congressman Gonzalez has said many things that are encouraging. Congresswoman Salazar, obviously, also is another one that said some good things. I think that there's a handful that perhaps we could work with on some bills that did get bipartisan support in the last Congress. So let's see, I have talked to my chair of the subcommittee, Congressman McClintock. We have committed to sit down with each other. We want to see if there are places, even if it's a very narrow section of the Venn diagram, if you will, where we can agree. But let's find some of those things. You never know what can get done unless you explore it.
And a lot of people, I think, are looking at this speech as potentially the case for Biden's reelection. Do you want him to run again?
I do want him to run. I said that about a month ago, and everybody seemed very surprised because I was a Bernie Sanders person. Bernie and Elizabeth are my two, I think they've done amazing work for our party and for the country. But I think this president deserves another shot at another 4 years. He has really delivered in a way that is extraordinary. And I understand that not everybody sees this yet, but the transition from Reaganomics to Bidenomics, the belief that we can raise revenue on the wealthiest and put those savings into lifting people up with things like universal child care and all of the things we've done, strong industrial policy, antitrust enforcement. This is a president that has accomplished so much in such a short period of time. Probably the most difficult time in our country in recent history. And he really represents both stability and progress versus chaos from Republicans. He should run again.
An interesting binary choice there you present. As that campaign rolls along, please come back and see us again, Congresswoman Jayapal.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
Back here live on Capitol Hill. We know what the country thinks about President Biden, but what about the opposition?
Here to answer that question is CBS News' Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, how do you answer that question?
Hey, guys. Great to talk to you. And that's a great backdrop right there. Let me show you what I got behind me. It's going to be a big difference in priorities for starters. And the State of the Union is often about setting priorities, right? For Democrats, and that's going to be a big part of the audience here for Joe Biden, reducing gun violence, lowering inflation, this is common and bipartisan, addressing climate change are priorities. But let's turn to what you asked. What are the Republicans' priorities? They share, this is important, they share the priority of lowering inflation. So probably no surprise the president will talk about that. But then we get differences. Securing the U.S.-Mexico border is a top one. Reducing crime, we heard a lot of echoes of that in the campaign. We hear it now. And reducing the budget deficit. This is going to come up, of course, in the debt ceiling negotiations. This is what Republicans are talking about. And I'm going to pull up a slide here, if this thing, I can find it, where there's going to be some differences, because I'll tell you this, within the Republican Party, Republicans who consider themselves MAGA Republicans are much less likely to want to compromise on the debt ceiling. And take a look at this. Would you raise it even if it meant the U.S. would default on its debts? Non-MAGA Republicans, as within the party, say, yeah, go ahead, raise it in that case. But you get a drop-off there among MAGA Republicans, less likely to want to raise it, less likely to want to compromise. We've seen that throughout the polling. Those are the differences. You might see them in Congress. You definitely see them in the rank and file among Republicans, guys.
Yeah, Anthony, that's really interesting, especially as the president's calling for unity. That gives us a good backdrop about how the parties are really feeling. Thank you so much. And for the record, we love your backdrop as well.
Thanks. Have a good night.
And tonight, good to see you. And tonight's State of the Union address is expected to have a major focus on China.
Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon joins us next on what he needs to hear from the president on that and how he's navigating divisions within the Republican Party. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting live tonight from the Capitol across the political divide.
I have no more campaigns to run. My only agenda, I know because I won both of them.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
The first U2 show really was on this outside here.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and we go person to person with Bono.
Community is at the very heart of U2's music. There was magic, you know, that's all we had.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
If it's important to our nation,
Madam Speaker, I want to talk to you, of course, about abortion.
it's on Face the Nation.
How much money is it that you think you need to go ask Congress for?
The why behind the biggest stories.
Can there be stability if Vladimir Putin remains in power?
Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS reports. As the nation of Hungary evolves toward autocracy,
if you define an autocrat as someone that the people can no longer get rid of, even when there are elections, he's definitely an autocrat.
some American conservatives like what they see.
Viktor Orban has done a tremendous job, and you've kept your country safe.
CBS Reports explores their growing alliance.
I have come to Texas. We should unite our forces.
So there are a ton of booths here, a lot of young people here.
And what it means for American democracy.
Prime Minister Orban is being accused of all kinds of things simply because he doesn't toe that liberal line. He stands for Christian conservative values.
To sum up, the mother is a woman, the father is a man, and leave our kids alone. Full stop, end of discussion.
A new conservative alliance, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Let's bring in our partners at the Weather Channel.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
Feel the forecast, streaming on CBS News.
We're really excited that we've been honored with the Emmy Award for Outstanding Live News Program. But we know we couldn't have done that without you. So thank you. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe.
And I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns. Tonight's State of the Union address is expected to have a renewed focus on the United States' fragile relationship with China.
The Navy has been working to recover the debris from the Chinese spy balloon that floated across North American airspace for 7 days. The military shot it down off the coast of South Carolina on Saturday.
So, for more on this, let's bring in Republican Congressman from Nebraska, Don Bacon. Good to see you.
The center of the country, center of the universe, Nebraska.
Exactly. We do love Nebraska. Let's talk about what message you want the president to send to China tonight, if it's going to be part of his speech.
Well, it's very important that we defend our sovereignty. And I think we need a comprehensive, holistic policy with China. First of all, national security is a big part of that. Deterrence in Taiwan is another part. I think we should address the genocide with the Uyghurs, the trade imbalance. They're stealing our technology, and there's also a lot of millions and millions of dollars that they invest in our country to buy access. So I think a presidential strategy should look at all of these facets, and I don't know that he has to address all of these tonight, but he should have a strategy that looks at all of that.
How do you think he handled this latest balloon crisis? What do we call it? How do you think he handled this?
I don't think well. Of course, I don't have all of the information yet, so I'll caveat that up front. And we're going to get a full briefing on Thursday. But we knew about this balloon before it entered Alaska. And then it traversed Alaska, went through Canada, all the way down into Idaho, and then Montana, then through the rest of the United States. I think we should have taken the balloon down early, especially in the areas that don't have much people or very mountainous area. Because I think it's very important to tell China that we defend our sovereignty and that's most important.
The whole argument through the course of those 7 days was shoot it down over land. It could potentially, it was the size of 3 school buses, apparently. Right. Could have potentially caused catastrophic damage. Shooting it down in the water allegedly gives them a better look at it, at least after the fact. I imagine this will become a big issue for the Armed Services Committee going forward.
We will look at it. We're going to get a full briefing on Thursday where we'll get a little more information. But we had opportunities to shoot it down over Alaska and some areas that had no population there. And we don't know exactly yet. Maybe our intelligence knows and they'll brief us. What were they actually collecting? Was it doing real-time communications back to China via satellite? Some of the stuff will be useful to know in analyzing whether we did the right thing or not.
This idea that they didn't know that this had happened during the Trump administration until recently. Right. Have you seen yet an explanation as to how that could have been? Was it in that UFO report that came from the Pentagon that finally clarified what it was? Or?
There was some speculation that may have been identified as such. But at the time, we did not know that was a balloon. So when the military said it's happened 3 times under President Trump, the inference was President Trump didn't do anything or the military didn't do anything at that time. So why are you mad now? Well, at the time, the military didn't even know that there were balloons flying over Hawaii, Guam, southern Florida. Yeah. It was actually getting intelligence after the fact, which you can read between the lines. We figured out from our intelligence sources in China that they had done this after the fact. So we didn't know it at the time. So it's really sort of unfair to blame the previous administration for not acting.
Part of the reason we wanted you to join us this evening, and we're glad that you did, is because you're one of those Republicans now that sort of sits in the middle of this chamber, if you will, at least ideologically. I read an interesting article in the Washington Post yesterday that suggests you are the Republican Joe Manchin. First of all, is that a fair moniker? And if so, what is it about the senator and his reputation then that you're trying to embrace that would suggest that you're going to be somebody?
Those surely weren't my words.
I noticed that, which is why I'm curious if you agree with the description.
I do believe I'm a conservative. I believe in having a common sense, honest approach. I have my own moral compass, and I'm an American first. I served my country 30 years in the Air Force, and so I don't want to be a party person first if it doesn't make sense, if the policy doesn't align right. So, for example, I supported infrastructure. I thought that was an important bill for us to pass, important for our country. So I try to do the right thing, though I ideologically align as a conservative. I campaigned for Ronald Reagan at the age of 13 in 1976, but it's about doing the right thing. I want to stand above the hyper-partisanship and ensure that our country is getting things done. And if I may, hyper-partisanship in our country has stopped us from doing border security, better policy on medical care. I think Republicans and Democrats have the ability to sit down and find areas where maybe we agree on 50%, and we should move forward on that. But because of the partisanship, we don't do anything. We just argue.
Yeah, how do you actually see that happening? Because, I think the debt ceiling is a good example of this, where you have the White House saying, look, we're not negotiating. You have Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, saying yesterday, this is the time to negotiate over the debt ceiling. Mm-hmm. How do you get past that if you can't even agree to the terms of the argument?
Well, first, I'd point out that President Biden, when he was a senator, once voted against the debt ceiling limit increase. And 2, he has a quote saying, this is the perfect opportunity to negotiate on our budget. And he said that about 20 years ago as a senator. So he has a record, too, of using the debt ceiling as a negotiating leverage point. Now, as Republicans, we didn't vote for much of this agenda over the last 2 years. And so we don't feel like raising the debt limit, a clean debt limit rise is right, because we oppose a lot of the spending. But I think
it's already been spent.
But on party line vote for the most part. I'm not saying totally, but party line vote for the most part by Democrats. But I think we could agree on this. Let's keep discretionary spending, which is about 1/3 of spending, around inflation or a little lower than inflation. And let's get together, Republicans and Democrats, on mandatory spending and solve Social Security and Medicare.
Some of the cuts that some Republicans have even argued for are cuts to defense, your unarmed services. Is that something that you would tolerate, vote for?
It won't pass. It won't pass. We could keep defense spending maybe even with inflation, maybe 1 point below. But beyond that, I don't think any more drastic cuts would happen.
All right. Well, we will stay tuned.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here. And during the big speech tonight, President Biden could set the stage for a potential re-election bid.
We'll take a look at the Democrats' strategy heading into the speech with 2024 on the horizon. You're streaming Red and Blue.
What we can do together, not as Republicans and Democrats, but as Americans, to make tomorrow's America happy and prosperous at home, strong and respected abroad, and at peace in the world.
when weather turns extreme.
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
Every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
My name is Nora. How are you doing?
We go to stories. We travel there because we can bring someone to that story.
You have spinal issues and you can hit the ball that far.
It feels so good.
That's so incredible.
Tell me, what do you love about running?
Energy!
The news doesn't have to always be depressing. It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Technology is baked into the DNA of our generation.
Now streaming Chasing Fame.
I like being famous. I would love for my career to launch.
Is the hunt for social media popularity an opportunity?
To get verified is one of my big goals. If I get the blue check mark, it would open a lot of doors.
Or an obsession?
I spend a lot of time looking in the mirror because I want to look perfect.
Are the kids all right? Chasing Fame, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We're really excited that we've been honored with the Emmy Award for Outstanding Live News Program. But we know we couldn't have done that without you. So thank you. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
And welcome back to a special edition of Red and Blue. During the State of the Union tonight, President Biden is expected to lay the groundwork for a potential 2024 re-election bid.
And he's likely to make that announcement not long after the speech. Could be several more weeks. We'll wait and see. But the speech tonight, at least, is expected to set the tone for the president's next year in office and the direction of the Democratic Party.
So for more on this, Anton Seawright and Kevin Sheridan join us now. Antoine is a CBS News political contributor and a Democratic strategist. And Kevin is founding partner at Protean Public Affairs, a former RNC spokesman, and was a senior advisor to the Romney campaign back in 22, which we both covered.
2012, yes.
2012, see? Good to see you both. Antoine, let's start with you because this is a focus on President Biden. He's facing some challenges tonight in making this case for re-election. If you have most of the country saying that the country's divided, and you have a majority in our poll saying that his policies are contributing to the economy and inflation and everything we're seeing right now, how does he make that case for re-election?
Well, I think President Biden will do what he's always done, and that's continue to lower the temperature, but also speak to quality of life issues, bread and butter, barbershop and beauty salon, kitchen table issues. The president comes into tonight more handsome position than any other president, perhaps in my lifetime, a historic midterm election that he was able to capture, he and the Democratic Party, as well as perhaps one of the most productive legislative agendas in my political lifetime. So all that plays a factor. Tonight, you will hear the president make a real contrast between what he stands for and the values, what he thinks important, and the comparison to the other side, much like we heard during the midterm election. So I'm excited about tonight. I'm cautiously optimistic because I think the president will make the case about what he has done, what he will do, and what we have to do, charting a path going forward.
Kevin, you can forgive Antoine's optimism. He is, after all, a member of the president's party. But you look at these polls that have come out in the last 3 days or so, and they're pretty darn terrible for him. The economy's in bad shape, Americans say. He hasn't done anything to fix the economy, which I think is mind-boggling to a lot of us who've covered all this, because they have indeed tried to pass things, at least, that are designed to fix the economy, even if people don't think they have. His numbers are still mired in the 40s, and even a majority of his own party in the polling that's been released in recent days don't want him running again. This should be pretty easy for you guys on the other side to set up against, right?
Yeah, because I think President Biden and the White House have maybe misinterpreted what happened in 2022 in the election. We did not have a good night, obviously. Republicans fielded bad candidates, and we lost because of it. And where we fielded good candidates, we won, and we won back the House. So now we have the House, and we've got to get serious about governing. So I think you'll see a respectful Republican caucus tonight, I hope. There won't be any tearing up of the State of the Union. I think their offices should be tweeting in real time and responding afterwards, obviously. But they've got to get serious now. They've got to bring their issues to the table. Border security, getting tough on China, getting inflation under control, and crime.
But Kevin,
Go ahead, Antoine.
Kevin, I will say to this, Joe Biden traditionally has never had the right poll numbers, according to some in the media, some in our party, and yes, even some on the right. However, we heard the same song and dance during the midterms. There were going to be doom and gloom. There was going to be this big red wave. Because of the poll numbers, the red wave ended up being a red trickle. And the fact is, President Biden was able to bring the country together, Democrats and Republicans, to pass a legislative agenda that Washington, D.C. may have rejected. Washington, D.C. Republicans rejected. However, Republicans back in their districts respect it, embrace it, and there's not a constituency in the country, including Republicans, that have not benefited from the Biden legislative agenda.
Well, there was a red wave, but it was just it was only in Florida and parts of New York and some other places. But look, the president is not in a good position right now. There's a ton of real estate in the middle if he wanted to turn that way. If he went out tonight and said something about the border, if he said something about getting serious about that or getting tough on China, doing the things that the independent voters really want to hear, I think he would go up 10 points with independent voters. Right now, he's underwater, and even Democrats don't want him to run.
Kevin, to that point, I mean, Republicans campaigned over the midterms about putting a stop to the Biden agenda. So what evidence is there that there is some areas of common ground? I mean, that's certainly going to be part of the president's speech tonight, is trying to find those areas.
Well, let's see what he has to say. But no, there's not a ton of common ground between these two parties. They're kind of on different planets right now. But look, the Republicans were brought in to stop the spending, to get inflation under control, if that's even possible with one House. But you're not going to see any more huge spending bills. We'll see if they can get concessions in the debt limit increase, and then hopefully move on to get some serious things done. But yeah, we're in a kind of a holding pattern for the next 2 years, probably.
All right. Well, Congress might not be able to agree on much, but you two are sitting down at the table together, so hopefully that's a good sign of things to come. Antoine Seawright and Kevin Sheridan, thank you both. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And a reminder, a special edition of CBS News Prime Time with John Dickerson will stream live from Washington, D.C. at 7 p.m. Eastern, followed by a special hour of coverage anchored by Norah O'Donnell at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And we'll bring you live coverage of the president's speech and the Republican response from Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders starting at 9 p.m. Eastern here on the CBS News streaming channel. That does it for today.
You can stream Red and Blue anytime. When?
Anytime.
Monday through Thursday.
Well, anytime if it's Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, and a reminder, online. If you want to watch previous episodes of the program, that's what we were getting at. You can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just at the cbsnews.com/red and blue.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names